Hermetic Excerpts from Iamblichus's On the Mysteries of the Egyptians. Part 1. Introduction. Hermes, the patron of literature, was rightly considered of old to be a god common to all the priests, and the one presiding over the genuine learning relating to the gods, one and the same among all. Hence our predecessors were wont to ascribe to him their discoveries in wisdom, and to name all their respective works, books of Hermes. If therefore we participate in this God of the measure which has fallen to us, and become possible to us, thou dost well to propose these questions in regard to the divine sciences to the priests as to friends for an accurate solution. Having good reason, therefore, for considering the letter sent by thee to a Nebo, my pupil, as having been written to myself, I will answer thee truly in regard to the matters about which thou hast inquired. For it would not be becoming that Pythagoras, Plato, Democritus, Eudoxus, and many others of the old Greeks should have obtained competent instruction from the temple scribes of their own time, but that thou, who art contemporary with us, and having the same disposition as they, should be turned away by those now living, and recognized as public teachers. Part 2. We will now pass over these matters, as thou sayest that thou desirest us, quote, to declare plainly what the Egyptian theosophers believe the first cause to be, whether mind or above mind, and whether one alone or subsisting with another, or with several others, whether unbodied or embodied, and whether it is the very same as the creator of the universe, the demiurge, or prior to the creator. Also, whether all things have their origin out from one, or out from many, whether they likewise have knowledge respecting primal matter, or of what nature the first bodies were, and whether the primal matter was unoriginated, or was generated. End quote. First of all, I will tell thee the reason why in the scrolls of the ancient scribes of the temple many and various opinions are offered in regard to these things, and likewise why among those of the persons greatly skilled who are still living, the explanation is not given in simple terms. I say then that as there are many essences, and these differing, the innumerably many principalities of these being in different orders, were handed down, different ones, by different ancient priests. Hence, as Seleucus, the Egyptian theologian, describes, Hermes set forth the universal principles in 2,000 scrolls. Or, as Manetho affirms, he explained them completely in 36,525 treatises. The different ancient writers, however, being in conflict with one another, have in many places given different interpretations in regard to the particular essence. It is necessary, however, to ascertain the truth in respect to them all, and then set it forth to thee concisely, as we may be able. Part 3. Before the things that really are, even the first principles of all things, is one divine being, prior even to the first God and King, abiding immovable in the aloneness of his own absolute unity. For neither is intelligence nor any principle else intermingled with him, but he is established as an exemplar of the God self-begotten, self-produced, and only begotten, the one truly good. For he is the something, absolutely great and supreme, the source of all things, and the root of the first ideals subsisting in the supreme mind. Then, from this one, the God sufficient in himself caused himself to shine forth, and hence he is self-engendered and self-sufficient, for he is the beginning and God of gods, a unity proceeding from the one, subsisting before essence and the principle of essence. For from him are being and essence, and he is called accordingly the Noetarch, chief of the realm of thought. These, then, are the oldest principles of all things. Hermes places them before the gods of the ether, the empyrean, and the celestial regions. According to another arrangement, however, Hermes places the god Kneph as leader of the celestial divinities, and declares that he is mind itself, perceptive of itself, and converting the perceptions into his own substance. But he places as prior to this divinity the one without specific parts, whom he affirms to be the first exemplar, and whom he names Ekton, or the likeness. In him are the first mind and the first intelligence, and he is worshipped by silence alone. Besides these, however, there are other leaders that preside over the creation of visible things. For the creative mind, guardian of truth and wisdom, coming to the realm of objective existence and bringing the invisible power of occult words into light, is called in the Egyptian language Amen, the arcane, but as completing everything in a genuine manner, without deceit and with skill, Tha. The Greeks, however, assume Tha to be the same as Hephaistos, giving their attention to the creative art alone, but as being a dispenser of benefits, he is called Osiris, and by reason of his other powers and energies, he has likewise other appellations. Accordingly, there is also with the Egyptians another sovereignty of all the elementary principles in relation to the realm of generation, and of the forces in them. 4 of them are reckoned as male, and 4 as female. This sovereignty they assign to the sun. There is also another empire of the universal production around the dominion of objective existence, which they give to the moon. Then, marking off the sky into 2 parts, or 4, or 12, they place rulers over the parts in turn, more or fewer as the case may be, and over them all they set one who is the overlord. Thus the system of the Egyptian priests in relation to the first principles, extending from above to the farthest extremes, begins from the one and passes on to the multitude. The many being guided and directed by the one and the undefined realm of nature being placed under a defined measure of authority, even of the one supreme cause of all things. And the god produced matter, rendering materiality on the underside from essentiality, which being full of life, the Creator took it and fashioned from it the simple and impassive spheres. But the last of it he organized into bodies that are subject to generation and dissolution. These subjects have now been thoroughly discussed, and in the books which thou mentionest as having met with by chance, the solution of thy doubts is clear. For those which have been brought forward as the books of Hermes contain Hermetic doctrines, although they are often set forth in the manner of speaking peculiar to the Grecian philosophers. For they were translated from the Egyptian language by men who were skilled in philosophy. But Chiramon, the temple scribe, and others, if there are any who have treated of the primary causes in relation to the world, also explain the last principles. As many as hand down observations respecting the planets, the zodiac, the decans, the horoscopes, and the mighty leaders so-called, make known the distribution of the rulers to their respective domains. The peculiars that are mentioned in the calendars comprise of a very small part of the Hermetic arrangement, and those in relation to the stars or asterisms, or the phases, or occultations, or the increase or decrease of the moon, are among the last things in the delineations of causes by the Egyptian sages. The Egyptian priests do not, quote, explain everything as relating to natural objects. On the contrary, they distinguish the life of the soul and also the spiritual principle from nature itself, not only in respect to the universe, but also in respect to ourselves. Regarding it as firmly established that the mind and likewise the reasoning faculty have being by themselves, they affirm that the things that are born are created. They likewise place the Creator as first ancestor of those in the realm of generated existence, and they acknowledge the life-imparting power prior to heaven and subsisting in heaven. They likewise set forth pure mind as above the world, and also the one without specific parts in the universal world, and another that is distributed among all the spheres. They do not by any means contemplate these things with the reasoning faculty alone, but they also teach that by means of the sacerdotal theology, the aspirant may mount up to the higher and more universal, and those conditions established superior to fate, to God the demiurge, neither becoming attached to the realm of matter, nor taking hold of anything else besides only the observing of a proper time. Hermes also points out the same path. Iamblichus, a prophet, explained it to King Amasis, having found it inscribed in hieroglyphics in the inmost shrine at Sais in Egypt. He also divulged the name of God that extends through the whole world. There are also, however, many other arrangements in relation to the same things. Hence thou dost not seem to me to be right in saying that, with the Egyptian priests, all things are carried back to physical categories. For in their system, principles are many, and concern many essences. There are likewise supermundane potentates, whom also they worshipped by the sacerdotal rite. To me, therefore, these things appear to furnish common starting points for the solution of all remaining inquiries. But since we ought to leave none of them without examination, we will add them to these problems, and likewise hammer round them on all sides, in order that we may see where thou conjecturest that there is anything unsound. Thou affirmest that very many of the Egyptians attribute to the motion of the stars whatever may happen to us. But what the fact is must be explained to thee by many of the Hermetic concepts. For man, as these writings affirm, has two souls. The one is from the first intelligence and is participant of the power of the Creator, but the other is given from the revolutions of the worlds of the sky, to which the God-beholding soul returns. These things being conditioned after this manner, the soul that comes into us from the worlds follows and is affected by the periodic circuits of those worlds. But the soul, that is in its higher mental quality from the world of intelligence, is superior to the movement of the world of generated existence, and through this there takes place both the unbinding of fate and the upward progress to the gods of the world of mind. The theurgic discipline, or initiation, so far as it conducts upward to the unbegotten, is made complete by a life of this kind. That condition, therefore, about which thou utterest doubt, does not exist, namely, that all things are bound fast in the indissoluble bonds of necessity, which they term fate. For the soul has a principle of its own leading around to the realm of intelligence, and not only standing aloof from the things of the world of generated existence, but also joining it to that which is, even to the divine nature. Nor do we, quote, connect fate with the gods whom we worship in temples, and with carved images, as being unbinders of fate. Yet the gods do unbind fate, but it is the last and lowest natures that descend from them and are in close alliance to the genesis of the world and to the body that make fate complete. With good reason, therefore, do we perform to the gods every holy rite in order that they may deliver us from the evils impending over us, from destiny, as they alone, through the moral power of persuasion, have rule over necessity. Nevertheless, all things in the world of nature are not controlled by fate. On the contrary, there is another principle of the soul which is superior to the whole realm of nature and generated existence. By it, we can be united to the gods, rise above the established order of the world, and likewise participate in the life eternal and in the energy of the gods of the highest heaven. Through this principle, we are able to set ourselves free. For when the better qualities in us are in activity, and the soul is exalted to those beings superior to itself, then it becomes separate altogether from everything which it held fast in the realm of generated existence, keeps itself aloof from inferior natures, exchanges one life for the other, and gives itself to a different order, entirely abandoning the former. Why then, it may be asked, is it not possible to liberate one's own self through the gods that revolve in the sky, the ruling planets, to consider them as lords of destiny, and also as binding our lives with bonds that are not to be dissolved? Perhaps there is nothing to hinder this very thing. Although the gods possess numerous essences and powers in themselves, there are also inherent in them as many impracticable differences and contradictions. Nevertheless, it is lawful to affirm as much as this, that in every one of the gods, especially of those that are visible in the sky, there are principles of essence which are of the world of intelligence, and that through these takes place the release for souls from generated existence in the world. But although there were to be two classes of divine things being left, the gods that abide around the world and those beyond, there will be liberty for souls through the gods above the world. These things are told more precisely in the treatise concerning the gods, as for example, who are the restorers, and what are their powers, and also how do they liberate from fate, and through what sacred paths upward, also of what quality is the arrangement of the mundane realm of nature, and how does the absolutely perfect moral energy rule over it. Hence the passage which thou hast repeated from the Homeric poem, even the gods themselves are yielding. It is a profanation to utter. For the performances at the sacred worship in ancient times were prescribed by laws that were both pure and spiritual. Those who are in inferior conditions are liberated by a superior order and power, and when we remove ourselves from conditions that are inferior, we come into a better allotment. It is not affected, however contrary to any sacred ordinance that has existed from ancient times, in such a manner as to imply that the gods may be changed in disposition or in purpose by sacred rites afterward performed. On the contrary, from their first descent till this present time, God sent down the souls in order that they should return back again to Him. Never, therefore, does there a change occur by such a progress upward, nor did the descents of the souls and their ascending occasion violent conflict. For as generated existence and everything here are joined together at every point by the spiritual essence, so also, in the arrangement of souls, the liberation from the conditions of generated existence accords with the diligence of those around the realm of generated existence. End of the Hermetic Excerpts from Iamblichus's On the Mysteries of the Egyptians. Translated by Alexander Wilder, 1911. Read by Dan Attrell. If you would like to support more work such as this, please visit patreon.com/themodernhermeticist. And above all, thank you for listening.